What's going on, everybody? Dots Gaming here, and today I'm bringing you all my updated Wyvern solo PvE builds for the Elder Scrolls Online Harrowstorm patch. So as promised, these builds are now going to start rolling out for Harrowstorm. I am now done uploading my PvP builds. I wanted to get those out of the way first, and now we are going to be moving into the solo PvE builds. The Gloom build already is still perfectly updated. I made that on the Harrowstorm PTS, so there wasn't any changes. So that build that I have on YouTube and on my website is still perfectly up to date. I have this build. I got a huge overhaul today. I really sat down with my Magicka and I wanted to overhaul it a bit. Just based off of some comments I saw in the last video and just off of playing it more. And then we got the Magicka Necromancer build coming next. And then after that, we're going to have more and more classes coming. So let me know down in the comments below what class you want to see next after Magicka Necromancer. What classes do you guys want to see the solo builds first, just so I know what order to work on them in. But like I said, guys, this is a huge update to the Magicka Dragonknight here. We got some pretty big changes. I wanted to base this new version of the build off of an old version that I did VMA with. This build has been tested and run through VMA. So you can know that when you put this build on, you will be getting something that can take on Maelstrom Arena. I have run this build through Maelstrom before. So it's a lot of fun, high damage, good sustain, good healing. It's just a blast to play, and I think you guys are really going to like it. So moving into the gear, first and foremost, we have two pieces of Valken Scoria. So Valken Scoria is really good for soloing. I think you get that line of maximum health to help make you a little bit tankier, and when you deal damage with the dot, you have an 8% chance to summon a meteor to the target that deals damage at the target and damage in an AoE. So you now have that nice AoE splash damage. We have plenty of dots in the build, so this thing is going to be proccing like absolute crazy. And what I like it is you don't have to be in melee range in order for that damage to hit. So for example, if you need to kite out a boss and just kind of pepper them with force pulse and light attacks for a little bit, Scoria will still be proccing and dealing damage. So I really like Scoria for soloing. Our 5-piece that we are still maintaining on the build from last time is Burning Spellweave. Burning Spellweave is a Magicka Dragonknight staple, giving a line of maximum Magicka, a line of spell damage, a line of spell crit, and when you deal damage with a flame damage ability, you have a 15% chance to apply the burning status effect to an enemy and increase your spell damage by 507 for 8 seconds, and this can occur once every 12 seconds. So Burning Spellweave has always been a Magicka Dragonknight staple. It just synchronizes so well with the class, and so many of our skills, almost all of them, deal flame damage. We also get that burning status effect application, which gives us a proc of combustion to give us more sustain, and that big boost of spell damage is just going to further push our damage even higher. Now, we have not we're not running Silks of the Sun anymore. We're replacing Silks of the Sun with something else, and that is going to be Seducer. So Seducer gives us 2 lines of Magicka recovery, a line of maximum Magicka, and it reduces the cost of your Magicka abilities by 10%. So this is going to make sustaining when solo really easy, so that you're not forced into using that chains rotation. Without that, Magicka Dragonknight sustain is definitely really rough, but using a set like Seducer allows me to get very good sustain off of those 2 lines of Magicka recovery, as well as that cost reduction, which makes it that much easier to sustain ourselves when we are out there solo open world. So in terms of our traits and all that jazz, we are running Divines on basically everything. I have this 1 piece infused. I need to retrade it. We are using 1 medium, 1 heavy, and 5 pieces of light with maximum Magicka enchants on everything. We don't need any health enchants because we're getting the line of health from Scoria, and plus our buff food gives us a ton of additional health. We are running, you can either run 3 Arcane or 2 Arcane and 1 Bloodthirsty. It's up to you, but all spell damage for the jewelry. Front bar Inferno Staff, you're going to want to run a Flame Glyph, and then you can either use Nirnhoned or Infuse. You could even potentially go Precise if you want to and use the Shadow Mundus. I'm using the Thief currently. We'll kind of go into that in a little bit. I'm using the Thief currently, but I'd say Nirnhoned for bigger heals, Infused for more enchant damage. You have Sharpened for some good damage as well. There's a lot of traits you can use on the front bar, honestly. My recommendations personally would either be Nirnhoned or probably Sharpened. Infused is still good, but since we're solo, I think you could get a lot of benefit out of that the penetration off of Sharpened. So Sharpened for more damage, Nirnhoned for better healing, and then you also have precise if you want to use the Shadow Mundus for even bigger crits. And then back bar, we are using an infused Inferno Staff of the Seducer with the weapon and spell damage glyph to give us that big spike on our blockade. So in terms of our skills, we are running Force Pulse. I have moved into Force Pulse for all of my Magicka Dragonknight PvE builds, and I absolutely love it. It's a really, really good spammable. So it allows us to get that splash damage on the spammable too, which is really nice. Up to 2 nearby enemies will take magic damage if they were already afflicted with burning, chilled, or concussed status effects, which will be proccing relatively regularly in this build because we have an Inferno Staff on both bars, so we are able to get the extra status effect application chance, which is really, really good for us. So having that burning status effect on as many targets as possible will give us really good sustain, and then Force Pulse will give us that splash damage. Force Pulse also gives us a bit of range as well, so that if we don't want to be standing in something, we're not just kind of sitting there spamming T-Gen or something. We're actually able to get damage off with Force Pulse. So I really, really have been liking it as my spammable. We are using Burning Embers as our primary single target dot, so this does some initial damage and then more damage over 14 seconds and heals us for 75% of this total damage when it's done, which I absolutely love. And enemies hit by the initial hit are afflicted with the burning status effect. So this essentially reduces the cost of this skill by like 500 magicka, which is really, really nice. And giving us that nice big heal when this dot ends is really, really good for helping to keep us tanky when we are out there soloing things. So really, really nice. We have Elemental Drain. We need a source of major breach while we are soloing since we don't have any allies to do that. So this is really, really good. Plus it gives us Minor Magicka Steal, which gives us a ton of Magicka Restoration, 600 effective Magicka Recovery. So Elemental Drain, really, really good for those reasons. We are also using Engulfing Flames for our 10% boost to our flame damage, which this will be 10% when Burning Spell Weave procs. So it's a nice conal dot, flame dot. It also does some initial damage, but like I said, that 10% increased damage from all flame attacks is why we have this on our bars. Really, really strong. Now, our main shield is going to be Harness Magicka. The good thing about being a Breton and having Seducer on is that Harness Magicka really not that expensive compared to how it is with other builds that don't run Seducer or if you're not a Breton. So you can use Harness Magicka really, really frequently, and when you're getting beat on by multiple targets, this damage shield will restore a pretty significant portion of Magicka back to your character. Really, the sustain from maintaining like Harness Magicka, like on my Magicka pool, sustaining Harness Magicka really wasn't too bad. I was able to just, like, if I needed to super big heal in the pinch and didn't want to swap to my back bar, could just Harness Magicka and reapply Burning Embers, and the Magicka would protect that heal, and boom, I'd be back at full. So really, really good combination. I love having this damage shield on the front bar for that easy access. We are also now using Shooting Star as our ultimate to kind of play into, like, the little bit more of the range. As you can see, I wanted to incorporate into the build. We have Scoria for a little bit of a range nuke. We have Force Pulse now as a bit more of a range spammable. This just allows us to apply our dots and not have to sit in melee range, and then this ultimate plays into that too. Being able to shoot this off from 28 meters, dealing flame damage, knocking all enemies down in the area, stunning them for 2 seconds, leaving a dot on the ground, and with this generates 12 ultimate for every enemy hit by that blast. So if we hit a bunch of adds with this, it's going to refund a huge portion of the cost, which is just going to make it so that we can get this back even sooner. And as a Dragon Knight, that will also increase our sustain pretty significantly. Now, onto our back bar, we have Degeneration. So Degeneration is going to be another single target dot, 15k every 12 seconds, and this also gives us our major sorcery. So we will not have to use those spell power pots if we do not want to. We are running Unstable Wall of Fire. This is our ground dot, so it deals some damage every second. Burning enemies will take 20% more damage from this ability, which is really, really nice. And then when this ends, it just does a big explosion of flame on the ground. So this is our primary ground dot. You're always going to run one. This will proc our back bar enchant consistently on our front bar as well. So I really, really like it for that reason. We have Coagulating Blood as our big burst heal, 7.3k tooltip on that unbuffed. Also gives us Major Fortitude, but, you know, that's really not a big deal. We really kind of use this just for that burst heal. So if we really need a big heal in a pinch, Coag is here for that. We have Volatile Armor. So Volatile Armor is going to be our armor buff, and it also does a magic dot over 10 seconds. Pretty straightforward. I love to run the armor buffs when I solo, so we do have this on here for that reason. And plus that AoE 10k dot really isn't that bad compared to the rest of the dots in our kit. It actually is kind of on par with most other things, so just nice to have another AoE dot in the build. We are also now running wings, so wings will allow us to take 50% less damage from projectiles, which is really, really nice for when you're playing solo by yourself. I also still like running the protective plate to gain immunity to snares and immobilization, so just in case like I'm getting snared by something and I need to move, I can just cast protective plate. I'll be taking less damage from those projectiles, and I'll be able to move completely unimpeded. So really like protective plate as that back bar 5th slot. And we are also running Standard of Might. So Standard of Might is going to be our primary ultimate if like we don't need to use Shooting Star for sustain, or if we're on a boss, let's say, Standard of Might is going to be the go-to. You are going to want to use Shooting Star on ad packs, but Standard of Might on singular bosses. So this deals almost 4k damage every second for 20 seconds, applies Major Defile, increases your damage done by 15%, reduces your damage taken by 15%. So just a really nice AoE dot, and it gives you more damage done, and you take less damage, so it's perfect for fighting those bosses. Now, in terms of our stat pool, we have about 38k maximum Magicka, 19.5k health, 10k max stam, 1259 Magicka recovery with almost 2200 spell damage. Now, as you can see, our crit is 42%. Now, with a spell crit pot, if you choose to run them, your crit goes up to a massive 52%. So we have quite a high crit rating, which is really, really nice. Now, if you don't run crit pots, it's okay. That's actually part of the reason I did switch to the Thief for this build, is to give the build a little bit more respectable of a crit chance in case you choose to not run Prophecy Potions, and you just run trash Magicka pots. But still, even with like the break points for how the Shadow versus the Thief work, Thief actually ended up being more effective for this build. So our unbuffed crit, though, without prophecy is 42%. We got 20k spell resist and about 9.3k physical resist. We are a vampire for this build. I do think vampirism is worth it to give us that extra Magicka recovery, but you don't have to run it if you don't want to, but I have it on also for PvP things. I also, like I have explained, I'm using the Thief. Thief is, for this build, going to be better damage than the Shadow, so I like this for more crits. And then we are using Bi-Stat Blue Food because we are a Breton. So we are using, let me find it. We're using the Mistral Banana Bunny Hash. So this is going to be your buff food on a Breton. If you're not a Breton, you'll probably want to use Witch Mother's Potent Brew or Arteum Takeaway Broth. So that'd be your choice for food if you're not a Breton. But just play with your health. If your health ends up being a little bit too low, I don't think it should because you have Scoria. But I think, like I said, if you're not a Breton, Witch Mother's Potent Brew is going to be your go-to. And then potion-wise, you got two choices. You either got the Spell Crit pots for Major Prophecy, Restore Health, and Restore Magicka. That's going to be your more expensive pot option. But for budget potions, obviously, you're fine with just regular trash Magicka pots that just simply give you Major Intellect. Moving into champion points. I'm actually going to do the blue points last. We have 66 into Ironclad, 39 into Spell Shield, 56 into Thick Skin, 43 into Hardy and Ellie Defender, with 23 into Quick Recovery. We have 56 into Warlord, 9 into Sprinter, 75 into Arcanist, with 56 into Tenacity, 37 into Tumbling, and 37 into Shadow Ward. We have 61 into Elfborn, 64 into Elemental Expert, 11 into Spell Erosion, 61 into Master at Arms, 21 into Staff Expert, and 52 into Thaumaturge. Now, this is what I run for Trials. So what I would probably do for solo is I'd probably pop these points out of Staff Expert and shove them into Spell Erosion, since you're going to need way more penetration since you're not going to have any allies with you. So I would probably take some of these points out of Staff Expert and put them into Spell Erosion. So that's what I would recommend doing for that. Now, in terms of general rotation, it is pretty straightforward. Let me just head up to a target dummy here. So you want to maintain Volatile Armor on yourself at all times to maximize your tankiness, to make sure that you got that resistance buff up, since it brings your resistances up to 25k and 14.6k respectively. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you maintain Degeneration on your target for that major sorcery and that single target dot. You're going to want to maintain your Blockade on the ground, Engulfing Flames, Burning Embers. Like I said, actually always have Ellie Drain up, and then from there, you weave Light Attack Force Pulse until your dots need to be refreshed. You lay down the dots, refresh your Volatile as needed, and just go into your dot rotation just like this. Just go into your dot rotation. Now, when you need a big heal, if you're getting attacked, if you're being attacked by ranged targets, that's when you toss up your wings so that you take less damage. If you're taking damage, like obviously you will be because you're going to be out there soloing while you're on your front bar, you know, you got all your dots maintained. You're laying down that damage on your target. What I would recommend doing is just hitting that hardest Magicka Just hit that. Try to keep that maintained on yourself. And then if you take a big smack, hit that coag. And that's pretty much it. Build's relatively straightforward. Dot maintenance and buff maintenance on yourself is just pretty much going to be key there. But that's pretty much it, guys. Wyvern builds. All updated for Harrowstorm. I really, really like this build much more than the last one. The last one, I think, was still a little bit too close to what I ran for, what I was like running for dungeons and trials and stuff at the time. And actually, this patch I've moved into a Force Pulse rotation for trials. And so when I moved into that, I was like, you know what? I want to redo the Wyvern build. And I went basically back and looked at my old builds that I ran for VMA. And I built this based off of the old VMA build. So like I said, this build has been tried and tested in Maelstrom Arena. It does work there. I've run this a very similar setup to this in Maelstrom before. So I'm much more happy with this version of the build, and I think that you guys will enjoy this one a lot. So if you guys like the new updated build, I would appreciate it if you smacked a like on it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And to keep up to date with the rest of the solo Elder Scrolls Online builds that I have for my on my YouTube channel here, please hit that sub button as well as the bell to keep notifications on. So thank you guys for stopping by today. I very much appreciate it. As always, I'm Dots Gaming. I'll see y'all in the next one.